Avinu's mother. Okay, you know what? You want to make any comments? Let's move on to Lilith, right? I want to ask you a stupid question. Okay, when the Eibishter created Adam and Chava, did he create any more people? Huh? No. So where did Lilith come from? It's a Zohar, it's a Medrash, and the world loves to talk about Lilith. Why? Because she was an independent woman. She wasn't subordinate to her husband. She pushed her husband around. She didn't listen to him. So she represents feminism versus Chava was never subordinate to Adam Rishon. But I'm asking you a dumb question. Where did Lilith come from? You understand the question?
Yeah.
What's the answer? The answer by Pashtus is that Lilith was a shade. Lilith was a ruach. She was a spirit. She was like an neshama. She wasn't an actual person. And that's the way it's brought in the Sfarim. Somehow Lilith became a physical woman because it serves the purposes of people who like to talk about the liberated woman versus the woman who's subordinate to her husband, and now you're supposed to say blah, 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 5 blahs. The way you sing the blahs determines what they mean. The slower you say them, the more boring they are. But here's how I understand Lilith. And I have quite a few proofs for it. Lilith is not another woman. Lilith is another spirit. In Chava, Adam and Chava were created. You know that? Adam and Chava were created. Now, you learned Chumash in whatever grade it was, and they talked to you about the operation that took place when Adam and Chava, when Chava was created from Adam, right? How did your teachers teach you that story?
From his rib or something?
From his rib, right? But by the way, in the Gemara, there's no such opinion. Tzela doesn't mean a rib. Tzela maybe means vertebrae. That Adam and had a tail. They took that tail. That's why prosimians don't. That's why higher apes don't have tails. He took off the tail and made the female, right? But here's the but, and this is what your teacher should have told you, young ladies. The opinion that the Rashi brings about Adam and Chava and the operation is as follows: Adam and Chava were created together, attached back to back at the spine, like this. Chava was not created from Adam; she was created with Adam. You know why? Because human beings are different than animals in the creation of human beings. Hashem made animals male and female, correct?
Yeah.
But male and female animals don't live together. It's one of the most amazing things in the world is that there are animals, especially birds, that are monogamous. You know what that means? They're loyal to their partner. They're loyal to the partner. There are many species of birds that the males and females mate with the same mate every single season, but they don't stay together all year. They have the mating season, they produce eggs, they sit on the eggs hatch, they feed the birds until the babies fledge, till the babies grow up, and then they fly away. And then they go in different directions and they come back again for the mating season. In other words, in animals, biklau, the idea of marriage, where we understand marriage, doesn't exist. Hashem did not make male and female animals to live together. Hashem made human beings as a composite. Human beings are a man and a woman together. That's why He made them. Because human beings were created in such a way that they're supposed to have a relationship. But they did teach you in school, when they gave you all the Ashkafa classes, Ezer or Kenegde. Man and woman are created as one, as a unit. What was the problem? When the Eibishter created them, Adam was bigger and Chava was smaller. So Chava didn't have her own will. She wasn't her own person. She did whatever Adam wanted, but she did whatever wanted without free will. You're listening to me?
Yeah.
So He made an operation. He separated Adam from Chava. So instead of them being back to back, they could be face to face. Ponim el ponim. This says in Kisvei Arizal. I'm not making this up. This is actually true. This is not part of my concoction. So Adam and Chava were created to be human. What are human beings that a man and a woman, right? What's it in Chumash? You leave your father's house, you leave your mother's house, v'davak be'ishtei, you find your spouse, and you become one with him or her. The Eibishter made human beings in a kind of way that they're supposed to bond and become one. Because a husband and wife are best friends. Husband and a wife have a deep relationship. A husband and a wife don't just get together to have children. A husband and a wife get together to build a life. It's what separates human being from animals. Animals don't have such a concept. Animals have a concept of intimacy, being close to another person. Now, a man and a woman are very different natures. If you don't know that yet, you'll find it out soon enough. Believe me, you'll get married for about 50 minutes, you'll know that men and women are different beasts. I mean, when boys and girls meet, they all think they're very much the same. They all like to have fun and like to scream loud, but they're different creatures. The hardest thing in the world is to marry someone from the opposite gender. But it's exactly what Eibishter wants. A man marries a woman and he has to adapt to her. A woman marries a man and she has to adapt to him, and together they build a life. That's how the Eibishter made it. That surgery, that operation that separated Chava from Adam allowed them to have a meaningful relationship. Before that, Adam had no problems. But he didn't have a partner. He had a shmate. Maybe should separate Chava from Adam, and now Chava can say to Adam, now you're being stupid, stop it. Now you're acting like a child, stop it. But on the other hand, Adam and Chava can have a meaningful relationship. You understand? This is the significance of that operation. It's called in Kabbalah Nesira. You separate to bring them back together in a better way. Before that, they were connected in what's called Achei Temimim, back to back. The Eibush to separate Adam from Chava, they should have a much more meaningful relationship upon him. You listening? You understand? Then Adam and Chava each made das tevera. Now, Chava was seduced by the Nachash. Chava brought the fruit to Adam. And what should have Adam done? He should have refused it, but he ate it. Now, when Adam ate it, right? Whose fault was that? You remember Chumash? He blamed it on his wife. And Rashi says, Kan kofa b'teiva. You should know in Sifrei Musa, one of the worst midas is to be an ingrate. Somebody gives you something good, then you don't react correctly. Hashem gave Adam a wife. A wife that could be his partner, a wife that could talk to him. She gave him a fruit which he wasn't supposed to eat. He ate it by his own free will and he blamed her. It's considered one of the, it's the first midas thrice in Teira, is this eating, is blaming Chava. He blames her. So Adam eats the fruit just like Chava does, but he makes the terrible mistake of blaming her. As a consequence of this, their world changed. After Eitz Hadas, Adam and Chava lived in a different world than before. One of the components of that change was that there was now tension between Adam and Chava. What was the tension? I made a mistake. You made a mistake. But I didn't blame you, you blamed me. So you know how I understand Lilith? Lilith was a spirit that came into Chava that made her say to Adam, we're husband and wife, we're married to each other, but I'm going to do things my way. There was a lack of harmony in their marriage. That's how I understand it. There's a lack of, so Lilith is not another woman. There's no other women around. This is a ruach. She's a spirit. She's a shade. And the spirit says, instead of a man and woman getting together and doing what they're supposed to do, which is achieve this incredible harmony, which is very, very hard to do. Each one of you has a father and a mother, so you know that Shalom Bayis is one of the most difficult. I think Shalom Bayis is harder than raising kids. I think getting along with your spouse be'emes it's a lifetime of work. I tell the girls, and you guys are still seminary alephs, I don't know if I should tell it to you yet, but I'm telling it to you. The greatest thing you'll ever do in your life, and the hardest thing you'll do in your life, is be married. There's no greater reward than having Shalom Bayis. There's nothing more difficult than achieving it. And you can't do it without a partner. If your husband doesn't work on the marriage, you can't have a marriage. You have to be humble enough to work on the marriage. He has to be humble to work on the marriage. And between you, you figure out how it can make you both happy, make compromise, make it work. Lilith was a spirit that went into Chava that made her rebellious. They were still married. But she wasn't cooperating with Adam Rishon. She was angry with him. So it says in the Midrashim that the children that they had was not well. Why? Because when a husband and wife live together and there's no Shalom Bayis, the children suffer. But it lasted 130 years. After 130 years, I don't know who the therapist was, I don't know who was the Shalom Bayis counselor, but Adam and Chava got over the Aveira, they got over the guilt, they got over the blame, and they were able to join together not as a man and a woman living together, where even though they're living together, there's a lack of cohesion, they achieved harmony, they achieved real intimacy, real closeness. And that's why at the end of 130 they had a son whose name was Shais, that it says in the Chumash, B'tzal Meked Musa, he was created like Adam Rishon. He was quite healthy, he wasn't sick. And if you will study the different quotes that everybody brings about Lilith, people love to make Lilith into a troublemaker, they make into a feminist. You will realize that what I just told you is quite logical. And it's quite consistent. You look up the sources, but the original sources, don't go to Wikipedia to read about Lilith. You could go to Wikipedia, but when Wikipedia, one of the nice things on this page, I have this page about, there's 15, so everything is sourced. I don't have to trust Wikipedia because I have 1 through 15. I can look up the sources myself. That's what's good about this. So if you want to know about Lilith, you can look up Wikipedia, but look up the sources. It's a Zoyar, it's a Medrash, and you will realize that Lilith is not a woman, Lilith is a Ruach. She's a shade, she's a spirit. That spirit could be used for good, that spirit could be used for bad. Chava is, what's the right word? Is possessed by Lilith. But she's possessed by Lilith because something happened in her life that leads her away from how a man and a woman that are human are supposed to live together. David made an operation. He separated Adam from Chava, so they should have a meaningful relationship upon him. Then they made this mistake. Chava didn't have Aveda. But Adam blamed her instead of blaming himself. So this is where Lilith comes into the picture. But the nice part of the story is that they got over it. They lived long enough together that they came back together and they were able to have a son that could be the source of all of humanity. And what is the meaning of humanity? The meaning of humanity is, and a man and a woman get married and they live together in harmony. Not Adam and Lilith, where the wife is fighting with the husband all the time, but Adam and Chava. Okay? This speech, I think, is quite credible. The Avraham Avinu's mother's speech, you can take a leave. But this one, I thought this through. I invented this. I didn't see it in any source. But if you will go to the sources that talk about Lilith, you'll realize that what I am telling you is it's a pretty good explanation, actually. Okay, questions or comments? You got 5 minutes.
She didn't make Chava do the Achei. It was after.
That's what I'm saying. Lilith comes after the Chet. That's what I'm saying. Before the Chet, they were in Gan Eden. So the way it's described, that Lilith is Avraham Avinu, Adam Rishin's first wife. That's how it's brought in the Midrashim. The way I'm explaining it, he was the first wife after they were kicked out of Gan Eden. Once they were kicked out of Gan Eden and they were put on earth, she was his first wife. In other words, Chava was in Gan Eden, they were the way Adam and Chava are supposed to be in a perfect world. When they were kicked out of Gan Eden, they went out into the real world. Adam Rishon had a problem with his wife. She wasn't cooperating. And it was his fault. She blamed him for something which he should have taken blame for himself. His second wife, they figured it out over time, and then they had a relationship the way the Eibishter wants a husband and wife to have a relationship. Comments or questions? If you have no questions and no comments, I will let you go. And you will save 4 minutes of your life. Okay? We're good?